Hello, I'm Michael.
I'm Sally, and this is Wrestle MSX.
We started with the Bloodlines car pulling up and Paul Heyman awaiting their arrival. "Where's Jacob Fatu?" asked Heyman as the Bloodline emerged from their car. Nothing was said as Solo, Tama and Tanga made their way through Gorilla and to the rampway as their music played. Then on the screens behind them, another car pulled up behind theirs and out got the A-Team. No, it wasn't. Orton, Owens and the undisputed champ himself, Cody Rhodes. They quickly walked from their car through Gorilla and then stopped mere meters behind the Bloodline. The crowd were going wild for this, as the two groups just stared at one another, the calm before the storm. Then all hell broke loose, the cameraman not knowing where to go. We did see Orton back body drop Tonga onto the crowd barrier and Owens perform a swanton onto Lower, where he was laying on a strategically placed table. The good guys then stood triumphantly in the middle of the ring as the Bloodline went back up the ramp. Nick Aldis then came down with security. The problem was there was nothing to break up, so a sacrificial lamb was forced into the ring and promptly, sacrificed by Orton. Not an actual lamb, but a security guard. The rest of the security team then entered the ring and, like the first lamb, were beaten and dispatched with. Orton then said, "We're going to put the Bloodline down for good," with Rhodes then saying he thought he'd finished the Bloodline. Aldis, not happy, left the ringside and came back with some New York cops. Just before Cody left though, he had one more thing to say to a listening Solo Sikoa. "I don't see a head of the table, just a seat filler." With that said, Cody and the boys left the ring, got in the car and went home.
Next we have a women's triple threat qualifying match for Money in the Bank. Tiffany Stratton versus Jade Cargill versus Candice LeRae. LeRae and Stratton know Cargill is the threat, so double team her from the off. It didn't last long though, as Cargill super kicked Stratton out the ring and then gorilla pressed LeRae over the top rope onto her. Nia Jax then made her way out, presumably in Stratton's corner. But she was followed by Bianca Belair. With Belair and Jax arguing and the referee standing between them, Jade didn't see Indi Hartwell sneak up behind her and push her into the ring post. Cargill was outside the ring at the time. With Cargill down, Stratton pulled off the prettiest moonsault ever on LeRae and picked up the win.
We go backstage and see the Street Profits booked for a match next week against Pretty Deadly. The Profits were after the Bloodline, but Aldis said that they've left.
Next up, and something I'm looking forward to, is a triple threat qualifying match for Money in the Bank between Logan Paul, Santos Escobar and LA Knight. I mean, maybe not so much Escobar, sorry.
Yeah.
But Knight and Paul, definitely. Just before that, we see a dishevelled looking Paul Heyman begging Solo to let him serve him and then asking where Jacob Fatu is. "Jacob's not here, and we're going to make you being my wise man official," replies Solo.
Back to the match and Knight heads straight for Paul. After he gets a few shots into Logan, Escobar then gets involved and he and Paul then decide to team up and take on Knight. A hurricanrana by Santos gets a 2 count on Knight. Paul then gets a 2 count on Knight, which is followed up by a phantom driver on Knight from Escobar for yet another 2 count, but only because Paul broke it up. A massive back body drop from the top rope on Escobar by Knight was followed up by Paul hitting Knight with a swanton and getting a 2.5 count. That's how close it was. Knight then hit BFT on Santos, but Logan tried to steal the win by rolling up Knight as he went for the cover. Knight countered the roll-up pin and rolled up Logan instead, scoring the victory and progressing to the Money in the Bank final.
We then take a moment to remember Roman Reigns' father, Seeker, also a WWE wrestler, who passed away on June 25th. He was one half of the Wild Samoans.
Back to the ring and we have Naomi versus Blair Davenport versus Indi Hartwell in another triple threat qualifying match for Money in the Bank. While Hartwell and Davenport were colluding on how to deal with Naomi, she decided to drop kick both of them. This was then followed by a double crossbody on both of them and then a split-legged pin on both of them, but to no avail as Hartwell and Davenport both kicked out. A Falcon Arrow by Davenport and Naomi got a 2 count, but then Jade Cargill made an appearance. Payback was coming for Hartwell, who interfered in Cargill's match earlier. Cargill hits Hartwell, then rams her into the ring post and tosses her back into the ring. Davenport is out of it, having been taken care of by Hartwell earlier. Naomi makes short work of Hartwell after Cargill did most of the damage, and a pin on Hartwell by Naomi sees her through to the Money in the Bank match.
We then see Grayson Waller and Austin Theory giving DIY a beatdown backstage ahead of their tag title match next week.
Final match, well, action of the night. Paul Heyman's acknowledgement ceremony. As Heyman goes through his usual ladies and gentlemen spiel, Solo interrupts by holding out a hand, signifying he wants the mic. Heyman reluctantly gives it to him. Solo then introduces us to the newest member of the Bloodline, the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu.
After a quick break, we see Solo asking the MSG crowd to acknowledge him. Of course they do. No, they don't. They boo the hell out of him. He then asks the Bloodline individually to acknowledge him. He calls them out one at a time, and Tama, Tanga, and Jacob all fall in line, acknowledging Solo. Then it's Heyman's turn. Solo turns to Heyman and asks him if he acknowledges him as his tribal chief. As he does so, he pulls out the Ula Fella, the necklace that once adorned Roman Reigns' neck. As Solo bows his head for Heyman to place the Ula Fella around his neck, Heyman, now close to tears, says, "I love you and I acknowledge that you are not my tribal chief." The crowd cheer this wildly, but then Heyman suffers a Samoan spike by Solo and a flying headbutt by Jacob. For their final act of the night, Tama and Tanga hoist Heyman up
He's a big boy.
onto Jacob for him to then powerbomb Heyman through the announcer's table. Jacob then places the Ula Fella around Solo's neck, presumably cementing his place at the head of the table. We go off air once again with the Bloodline acknowledging and Paul Heyman, presumably dead.
Thank you again for watching.
And we hope to see you on Tuesday for our Raw review.